Hey guys, it's Melanie here. I just want to quickly do a little reaction to this new Faleena Hopkins Facebook post that has been making the rounds. I'm just going to quickly read through it because it's not very long. Rumor circulating. I dropped a pen name and a cartoon avatar years ago to write proudly using my own name and my own face. This was when I was auditioning for roles that could have seen my sexy covers I designed myself and balked at hiring me. I literally don't understand that sentence. Whatever, moving on. That's the gripe authors often have for hiding behind an avatar. What would people think? I would never have abandoned the safety of the mask if I weren't proud as hell to write romance, be what and who I am, and proud as hell of the women and men who are reading my books, which I have shown repeatedly in everything I've done. If you think I called my readers unsophisticated, that's ridiculous, especially with how intricate and intertwining this Cocker family is. And under it all, it was my mother who introduced me to romance with The Devil's Cub. The Devil's Cub? Devil's Cub. Okay. I almost said Devil's Club, but it's definitely Devil's Cub. She proudly owned every single one of Georgette Heyer's books. Heyer. I should know how to pronounce it because she's like dead famous in the romance community. But as we covered before, I'm homeschooled. I don't know how to pronounce anything. A few people kindly helped me out. It's Kevin Nooper. I should have been able to guess that, but I couldn't. That's his name. That's how it's pronounced. Anyway, she probably owned every single one of Georgette Heyer's books. Her favorite author tied with Tolkien. Oh, Georgette was, okay. She was and is my hero, and is the reason I fell in love with the genre. I've never met a more sophisticated nor more intelligent person than her, a woman who became a VP of Wells Fargo Bank without a college education. Rumor dismissed. And then she just has an image on here that says sophisticated. It's just a text. Just text on a off-white background. Okay, so, let's talk about this. Because, in fairness to Faleena, she didn't outright call her readers unsophisticated. Her lawyer wrote a brief that contained that phrase. She didn't write it, I presume. Probably she signed off on it before he submitted it, but it's not like she personally posted on her Facebook, my readers are unsophisticated. And that's what some people are acting like this is. So this is her kind of reaction to that. But let's talk about what actually happened. What actually happened was her lawyer filed a brief using that term. And she doesn't acknowledge that at all in this post. She's acting as if she doesn't know why people are saying these things. And even though it is a mischaracterization to say that Faleena Hopkins personally called her readers unsophisticated, it's oversimplification. It's not a correct, accurate way of summarizing what's actually going on, in my opinion. Whether or not that's her personal opinion, does she think her readers are unsophisticated or not, it doesn't really matter. The point is, it's not that simple. She didn't just sit down on Twitter or Facebook and say, my readers are unsophisticated. But she's acting like she doesn't know why people are saying it. And that's disingenuous, because you know exactly why they're saying it. It was wording from a legal brief that your attorney filed on your behalf. That is why people are saying this. And so the fact that she's just talking about how much she respects romance and romance readers, which might very well be true, is totally skirting the issue of why, then, if she doesn't believe that, why did she let her lawyer file the brief saying that it was the case? Okay, let's examine this. Because as Faleena herself sort of alluded to in the open letter blog post that I covered in a previous video, it is pretty difficult to take legal action against anyone without coming across like an asshole, even if you're justified. And stuff like this is part of the reason why. Because in fact, that phraseology, the unsophisticated consumer thing, that is, as you may have noticed if you read the transcript of the hearing, or if you watched my video where I went through it, that is an actual legal term. It's one of the points of reference used to determine the validity of a trademark, the sophistication of the consumer. And as is often the case, I assumed reading that the definition of sophisticated probably was different in a legal sense than it is in the way that it's commonly used. Because that's almost always the case. The legal definition of words is usually very different from what people assume it to be. So I decided to look into it, because it's not like this is the first trademark dispute that's used this. Like, this is a very common concept. So I decided to actually do some research, like a real adult human, and figure this out, which is very unusual for me. What I found was really interesting. So I found a blog from a guy called Eric Waltmeyer, who is, in fact, an IP attorney. And this is from 2015, so it's fairly up to date. And he talks about the concept of a sophisticated consumer. And the way that that's sort of defined is very specific, and it's not what you might assume. And also the same concepts are also covered in the IP Law blog, which is the iplawblog.com, which is written by someone at a law firm. Okay, Jeff Peach. It's Jeff Pitsch. That's too many consonants in a row for me to figure out. But both of them basically say the same thing, which is consumers are likely to exercise a higher degree of care. That is to say, they are likely to be more sophisticated consumers in situations where either A, they are highly educated or highly, experienced in the field in which they are purchasing, or B, they are purchasing something that is quite expensive, or some combination of the two. So, for example, consumers of candy are less sophisticated than consumers of a car. Even if it's the same person, the sophistication of the consumer isn't, meant to be some sort of, mandate on that person's overall, purchasing ability. It has to do with the product a lot more than it does the actual consumer. So with that sort of twofold, definition, I can see why Cardillo, Hopkins' attorney, chose to highlight this issue as one of his, stronger cases for the legitimacy of the trademark in his brief. He knew he wasn't going to have a lot of time to try and convince the judge of the legitimacy of the trademark, because that wasn't the primary purpose of the case. He knew he had to try and hit the strongest points that he had. And he felt that one of the strongest points he had was an argument that romance readers are not sophisticated consumers. And if we look at the sort of legal precedent for that, we can see how he might think that that's a good argument, because romance novels are not as expensive as cars. They're a little more expensive than candy, but not much. But they are on the cheaper side as far as products go. And for that reason, to characterize romance readers as unsophisticated in that specific context and using that legal definition makes sense to me. I can see why he did that. The thing about, the being educated in the field, that's not as applicable. I think it's those of us who know the industry know that romance readers, generally speaking, know what's up in terms of the field that they read in regularly. So, their ability to look at an author name and determine who wrote the book is pretty high. Let's just assume that. So I do think it's really interesting that the judge just basically dismissed that out of hand. He barely even spent any time on it when he was going through the Polaroid conditions, I believe is what they were called. And one of them was sophistication of consumers, which was a big, point in the brief. He basically just immediately said, it seems to me that they're sophisticated buyers, so I'm not even dealing with this. And I think that's interesting because, like I said, I can see why Cardillo used that as an argument, so if only because romance novels are not, don't cost thousands of dollars, right? That said, like I mentioned, it is very disingenuous of her to pretend like she doesn't know what everyone's talking about. And that's how this post comes across to me. Had she simply explained what I just explained to you, because that's a great explanation. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I don't think I did a particularly good job of explaining it, but you don't have to, because the facts of it are that this word has a specific legal definition. It's not an insult. This is what it means, and it has to do with the fact that my book prices are so low that they attract impulse buyers. You could even do that. You can even toot your own horn a little bit. I don't know why I keep using the phrase toot my own horn. It sounds so sexual, and it's not at all, but it's so bad. I hate it. I don't know why I keep saying it. But, you know, you could totally make that explanation and just be like, listen, my lawyer used this terminology because it's a legal thing, and this is what it actually means, and you can explain it the way a layman can understand it. Sorry, layperson. I legitimately try to do that. It's not hard to explain in a way that anyone could understand. I just did, and I think almost anyone can understand that explanation that I just gave. She chose not to do that. Instead, she's choosing to talk about how much she loves her mom and how amazing her mom was, and she introduced her to romance, and she loves her readers. Oh, and by the way, she used to hide behind a pen name and a cartoon avatar, but now she's proud of what she does. Which is taking pot shots, of course, at some of the authors who do hide behind a pen name and who do use cartoon avatars, in many cases because it is not safe for them to be out as romance authors in their personal lives. In other cases, to ensure their safety from internet mobs, you know, because actual internet bullying can happen. It doesn't look like someone calling you out for filing a bad trademark, but it does exist. And she's sort of very cleverly, not very cleverly, using that as a sort of an in to make herself look better than all those, you know, quote-unquote shady authors. That's what she's implying. Let's not mince words. And I have a lot of thoughts on that issue. And I know I keep saying I'm going to make a video about it. I actually did. I made a whole video about the pen name issue before it became relevant to COCKYGATE, because something completely unrelated put me in mind of it, and I did a little video rant. And now I kind of have to redo the whole thing because it has a completely different context now that we're talking about COCKYGATE. And it's not an issue I discuss very often, but it is something I feel like I need to talk about because it's one of those things that I think people can really latch on to as a sign that they think somebody's doing something shady. And that's unfair. That's an unfair characterization. Pen names in romance are an incredibly well-established tradition. I honestly started using a pen name because everyone else was. Not because I was trying to hide. This is my real face. This is my real voice. Many of you have met me before. If I wanted to, like, somehow throw it all away and start over, it would be harder for me to disconnect myself from my identity as Melanie than it would for me to disconnect myself from my legal identity. I'm so much more out there as Melanie. For a good reason, because this is my career, and like Faleena, I'm very proud of it. And, you know, there was a time when I didn't use my real face because I wasn't confident enough yet, and it wasn't because I was ashamed of what I did. it was just a personal thing of where I was in my own journey, and I think it's, you know, disingenuous at best to imply otherwise. I think that was all I wanted to say for now. There's a lot more to be said about this issue, clearly, but I just needed to quickly react to this nonsense because the nonsense just keeps coming, and I feel like if I don't address it as it pops up, it just keeps piling up to the point where it doesn't even, I can't even begin to figure out where to start. So, you know, yeah, I think that's enough for now. I'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.